Hey, what's up guys, aarava here, and welcome back to an episode of my F1 2021 My Team Career Mode, episode number 30 today for the Belgian Grand Prix in Season 2. If you guys did miss the previous episode, then be sure to go check that one out before you see this one. That was the Hungarian Grand Prix just before the summer break, and what a race it was for Sergio Perez. Dominated the whole freaking race. We had a difficult time. We had an ERS failure towards the end of the race, which really did hamper us. I feel like we could have got a podium for sure if it wasn't for that ERS failure. That pretty much left us as a sitting duck. But I think there was definitely one driver that was even more annoyed than me at the end of that race, and that was Sebastian Vettel, the championship leader, with a shock DNF right at the death of it. You know, it came out of nowhere, you know, literally on the second last lap, wasn't it? Or third last lap. And that means Vettel's lead has been brought down by a substantial amount. There are now 9 points in it between our teammate Sergio Perez and Sebastian Vettel. You know, I thought Vettel was maybe running away with it completely, but this DNF changes everything. This could get, well, this has got Perez right into the fight, so I think genuinely now we can probably say with some confidence that Sergio Perez is in a championship fight. My teammate is, I am not. We're in obviously a fight in the constructors, but when it comes to the driver's title, it is just Perez v Vettel, it seemed like, which is at least better than Vettel running away with it. Obviously coming into the Belgian Grand Prix off the back of the in-game summer break, we've got the whole second half of the season to come, so who knows? You know, there's still a lot of time, a lot of races for me to maybe get myself into the driver's title fight, and I'm going to be trying my best to, but the track record speaks for itself. The last, you know, the whole season so far, but especially the last couple of episodes, you know, Perez has been outscoring us no matter what happens in the race, basically, and Vettel's been a very consistent man there in that Aston Martin of his, and he's, you know, he's carrying Aston Martin, because Stroll's really not been scoring points in the same way that Perez has been at times carrying our team, taking the car to places where I can't even get to in qualifying. That man over one lap has been getting things out of this car that I simply cannot. You know, it's a case of still getting used to the game somewhat, maybe. I feel like with, you know, upgrading the car does kind of get more confusing in a way sometimes, you know, and more upgrades that come through, you know, the car sometimes can feel even more imbalanced in a way when you get to kind of those extremes, I guess. But also at the same time, we'll admit that's just the classic, you know, racing driver getting excuses out here. I'm getting the excuse out now versus Perez. Simply put, we need to be a little bit quicker in qualifying for sure. In the race, I think we're pretty good, but obviously, you know, starting higher helps you finish higher, of course. As a whole team, though, at the Hungarian Grand Prix, we showed some really great speed when I didn't think we were going to maybe do it, because on Saturday, we were on the back foot a little bit around the Hungaroring, but to that effect, we continue to now buy some upgrades on the R&D. They're slowing down a little bit, because obviously the upgrades are very expensive, and, you know, we've done quite a fair bit now already, and it takes also time for these upgrades to come in, but we purchased another upgrade on the engine side of things, because a few episodes ago, we were in the top 3 for the engine comparison chart. We've now slipped down below even Red Bull, so Red Bull are now the top Honda-powered team in terms of pure, you know, performance according to the game. Obviously, a lot of these upgrades we're making are for the fuel and the ERS, so in terms of pure power, it doesn't actually make much of a difference, but in terms of how we use ERS, of course, it's been less of a worry anyway, but it can be even less of a worry if you get these upgrades in for the ERS and then also the fuel as well. But we need to keep at it for sure, because it's the classic phrase, if you're not moving forwards in Formula 1, you are moving backwards, and I've mentioned it before, you know, we upgraded so rapidly at the start of the season that I feel like there was a fear that we could kind of get to this point where we're plateauing, because obviously we don't have the HQ facility upgrades as well, and maybe this wall of development that we're going to hit, kind of almost like Brawn GP in 2009, where all their rivals caught them back up. I can already see the kind of pattern that McLaren and Ferrari are starting to slowly now wind themselves up for a really strong second half of the season, where they're bringing upgrades now a bit more rapidly. Obviously, we've got the career mode settings where the AI have the boosted R&D and cash. We've got the reduced ones. Up till now, I've been quite surprised. We've not really seen much of an effect of that in Season 2, but now you're slowly seeing it, I think, as we look on the R&D chart. They are starting to close us up a little bit as our rate of upgrades slow down. Having said that, though, we are still closing a little bit on Aston Martin and Mercedes. Those two teams have actually swapped positions now on the R&D chart. Of course, for a while, Aston Martin was the best team on paper, but Mercedes have taken that back, so it might be a very close affair around the Belgian Grand Prix as we come to Spa-Francorchamps. But of course, it's a very unique circuit. You've got really long straights, but also high-speed corners, so maybe, you know, McLaren has been very good in straight line as of late, historically as well, in these career modes, so let's see how they do. And then Ferrari, they have impressed me. You know, they've been having some good qualifyings. We've seen a bit more of them in the races, and it appears like they are getting back into the kind of, you know, frame of mind of trying to be a top team and trying to be a spanner in the works for the rest of us, especially for ourselves and Aston Martin in the championship fight. But this is going to be an interesting race weekend. Of course, we're going to have Vettel trying to bounce back from that DNF, and then there's also a forecast for some potential rain also around the race weekend, so we're going to have to watch out for that. And that's going to, well, we know how the rain ended at the Belgian Grand Prix in real life in 2021, so let's hope it's not a washout for the Grand Prix on Sunday. But right now here on Saturday, it's all about that one-lap pace. We got held up a little bit by Pierre Gasly. We actually got a bit of a tow from him, but then kind of got held up a tiny bit in the last chicane, I felt. And we also apparently got some underbody damage somewhere on the track, which is a little bit worrying because I literally have no clue where the damage has come from. So this must have been me riding over a curb a bit aggressively, but I don't actually know which curb it was, which is the more worrying part. So let's go on through qualifying, and I guess we'll see if it crops up again. If it is, we may have to kind of, you know, drive almost on our tiptoes a little bit in the race to make sure that doesn't happen, because if that was to happen in the race, there's no repairing that, obviously, and we would have a damaged car for the rest of the season. So let's see how it goes for Q2 and Q3. But here, looks like we're matching Perez a little bit better here in Q1 at least, which is good to see. But McLaren looking strong there ahead of both myself and Perez, but Vettel also at the top of the timesheet. So Aston Martin and himself at least looking strong. Obviously, Stroll's a bit of a different story in the other Aston Martin car, but Vettel continues to look strong despite Mercedes apparently being the best on paper, but they are looking a bit slow once again this race weekend. Going through the motions then for our flyer in Q2, and looking pretty damn good actually, being a little bit quicker there. 1/10 off Lando Norris ahead of Sergio Perez, but again, we have more underbody damage, and I still have no idea what part of the circuit this is on. I'm thinking maybe the exit of Blanchimont. There's that really chunky curve, which is really easy to go over when you're going flat out through that left-hander. So I think maybe there, or maybe the end of the Kemmel Straight when you're kind of straddling the curb on the right into the left-hander, potentially into Sector 2. But I don't know for certain. So this is going to be a little bit worrying, because this definitely means now it's happened now in Q1 and Q2. So I think we're going to have to be a bit cautious in the race and make sure we don't go over too many curbs to avoid any kind of, you know, actual permanent underbody damage to the floor or the barge board. So something to think about into Sunday, just like in real life sometimes when they tell drivers to stay off certain curbs because they could be quite dangerous. You know, I'm thinking Austria, remember, with the Mercedes cars in real life. We're going to have to maybe do that ourselves in this race, which is kind of cool in a way because it's like real life, but also annoying for us as there's going to be that constant fear maybe of which curb is going to break our car maybe on Sunday. And even here on this lap in Q3, you know, I mean, you saw there, I did take quite a fair bit of curb in that entire section, so maybe it's somewhere there. I don't think it's that flat curb here through Blanchimont. This is the curb I'm talking about there. Very 3D. I hardly hit it though this time, so maybe not. I guess we'll find out as we go down into the bus stop chicane, right and then left. Quick change of direction. Try and get the power down as early as we can. DRS open across the line, and it's P5 only though. We lost a bit of time in Sector 1, and again, we have more underbody damage. So I think it's got to be those curbs at the top of the hill after Kemmel Straight, because I don't think I really straddled the Blanchimont curb this much that time. But this underbody damage here in Q3 is actually a big deal, because it means I don't have time to go again. And I was saying just there, I did feel slower in Sector 1. I wasn't as quick in that section as I was in Q2. I know it for certain in terms of feeling, but in terms of lap time as well. And so that means we are behind Perez. We didn't qualify as high as I'd hoped because we have to end the session. There was no time for us to go out again. And so we qualify in P7. Sebastian Vettel, surprise, surprise, on pole position, bouncing back in style from the DNF he had at Hungary. But look at what I said, the McLaren's looking quick. Ricciardo in P2, Norris P3, Sainz very handy in the Ferrari P4. I've already noticed Leclerc didn't even make it through into Q3, so Sainz with a blinder there for the Scuderia, and Perez in P5. So I wouldn't say we're on the back foot, because we're only 3/10 off from with Perez to Vettel, and I think I could have actually gone quicker than Perez. Actually, for once, I felt confident we could have out-qualified him for the first time in a long time, but it's just a shame we had that damage. And Mercedes, like I said earlier, despite being the best team on paper, once again, they are still not quite there. I guess the AI drive is making a difference for the other teams. Let's go to the grid, though. There is some rain forecast for the start of the Grand Prix. Let's hope we get more than 2 laps.
Welcome along then to the Belgian Grand Prix, the race that gave us the maiden victory for the Jordan team in 1998. And in the same team, the phenomenal debut of a young Michael Schumacher. There's always something special around one of the many corners of this fan-favourite circuit. Spa-Francorchamps then, a 4.35-mile tour of the Ardennes countryside, with 9 right corners and 10 left corners, giving us a grand total of 19. Average lap speeds in the dry can reach about 145 miles per hour, but without a significant improvement in these conditions, we won't be seeing anything like that today. Anthony Davidson also joins me in the commentary box today. Let me ask you about Aston Martin. What do you make of their performance so far this season?
Well, the atmosphere within that team seems very positive at the moment. Everyone seems like they're in great spirits and having a lot of fun doing what they do, and that's definitely contributed to the performances we've seen.
Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting race. Sebastian Vettel has a clear track ahead of him today. He starts in pole position, with Daniel Ricciardo slotting in alongside. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have Norris, Sainz, Sergio Perez and Bottas. The owner driver, Hamilton, Stroll and Pierre Gasly. Leclerc, Verstappen, Fernando Alonso and Russell. Ocon, Tsunoda, Nicholas Latifi and Antonio Giovinazzi. Ireland, Mick Schumacher, Joe and Nikita Mazepin. And with lights out just moments away, it's time to go down to the track.
So thankfully it doesn't look like it's raining as hard as it did in real life here around Spa, so we will be getting a race that is actually longer than 2 laps and not under a safety car. We're on intermediate tyres, and it looks like we might actually dry out till the slicks towards the end, so that's going to be quite exciting. It's always quite confusing on this game, I must say, because there's this weird thing where it just looks so much wetter than it actually is. I don't know if they're ever going to patch that. It's something they can even patch, really, because it's quite a fundamental visual thing with the game, but it does definitely make things interesting for us when it goes from wet to dry or dry to wet. So yeah, halfway through, I guess, or just over halfway through, it should be getting drier and we will switch over to the slicks. But the first part will be surviving the start, I guess, the opening lap on Inters, and then trying to see, I mean, to be fair, on this game, I think I've had pretty good pace on intermediate, so I'm hoping we can go forwards a little bit and maybe try and make up for the poor qualifying or lack of a qualifying effort we had due to that damage on the underbody. Here we go then. We've come back from the summer break and it's time to go to 5 red lights for the second half of Season 2, and we're underway at Spa, and it's a very shaky start for us. Very, very shaky one indeed, actually, if you climb up the gears. It's 4 wide though into turn 1 nearly, and Perez with the dive bomb down the inside of the McLarens. We're playing a bit of ping pong with Lance Stroll and Valtteri Bottas there. Myself and the Canadian both dive bomb the Finn, and now we're looking to maybe go side by side into a Rouge, up the hill, up rally on side by side with Lance Stroll, and we've somehow kept our foot in there in the wet on intermediate, and it's now going to be a drag race down the Kemmel straight to try and get that P6. Bottas is pulling out on the left hand side to maybe have a look on the outside of us, but we should have the racing line into the next left-hander. We do. Meanwhile, Sergio Perez is going side by side with Daniel Ricciardo and squeezing out the Australian to get up into P3, so it's another electric start from the Mexican. He almost made a triple overtake really on the Ferrari and both McLarens, but Norris was able to maintain the P2 and Vettel maintained his P1 from pole position and looking already in control in the rain, 1.5 ahead of Lando Norris. Back to our POV then, lap number 3. We've settled down into the Grand Prix. It's now time to try and make some moves. We're closed up on Carlos Sainz ahead of us. It looks like Norris and Vettel are kind of in a world of their own in a way. They're breaking away, and there's definitely a gap between Norris to Perez. So Perez, in a way, is almost maybe bottlenecking this a little bit, surprising to say. So let's try and see if we can try and get Carlos Sainz, and then maybe make our way on to Daniel Ricciardo. Who knows? So I did say I felt like our pace has been pretty good in intermediate conditions on this game so far, so I fancy my chances, especially against the Ferrari. We should be a little bit quicker in a straight line, as Sainz really does give us a good old squeeze and hardly gives us the room to work with on left. We have to carve our way through on the left-hand side. He dives back down the inside. Very, very fine. We give him the space and the respect, though, on the inside, and we're still able to maintain P5, and we can now look ahead to that first McLaren of Daniel Ricciardo that Perez has already dispatched. Let's see what the pace is like versus them, because they did look very good in qualifying. Purple middle sector, though, so we are closing up, and we're looking pretty good at the moment. But yeah, Norris and Vettel on the minimap, they look like they are very much pulling away, and they're in their own little fight. And Norris looks very close to Sebastian Vettel, so they may be a fight for P1, but there's a safety car out, and what's that for? Let's look at a replay then. It was an incident nowhere near us, way further back down the order. Fernando Alonso going slow, an issue for him in the Red Bull racing car, and it looks like just him going slowly has maybe caused a safety car. Surely not. Something's going to happen here. Oh no, I can see what's about to happen. Oh, the Haas. The Haas has crashed into the back of Fernando Alonso. Good stuff, good stuff. So that is why the safety car came out, because there was a crash with a slow car as Alonso was retiring, or at least limping around with an engine issue. So now the safety car has come, and it is going on lap number 8. It is coming in, and we're getting ready to go green again. Sebastian Vettel will lead this race then as we go green. Norris in second, Perez third, Ricciardo fourth, and myself in P5 ahead of Sainz and Lance Stroll. Let's see if we can try and get an early jump maybe on the McLaren into turn 1, though. Ricciardo a bit slow, and a bit too slow for my liking. We nearly slam into the back of him. We have to take avoiding action and go a little bit wider than I wanted to, and Carlos Sainz has nipped down the inside there, so that's not what we needed at all. But for, I don't know, it's just a concertina effect, but it caught me out a bit. I wasn't expecting Ricciardo to be that slow into the kind of turning point for turn 1, so did well to avoid any major contact, or any contact really. And now we're going to try and re-overtake Sainz straight away down the inside, aggressive as we can be on the outside, and we're back up into P5, and it's going to be one more position pretty soon, because at the end of lap 9, Perez peels off into the pit lane. And so is he making a first stop onto Inters? I was maybe thinking, you know, potentially could we stretch this first set of intermediates to that dry period? We know it's coming at some point, I hope, unless the forecast was completely lying to us. But when it's coming, I'm not too sure, but I was hoping we could maybe try something clever and stretching it till that period. But as we watch Perez come in, he's coming for the dries. He's coming for the dries. It looks so wet out there. And like I said at the start of the race, you just don't know when it's time for dries. The AI do. Once again, my bloody team aren't telling me when to come in. Only now they do. So they favoured Perez there. They've told him to come in. They've only now offered me the pit stop strategy to come in into dry tyres. Obviously, I know he is basically the championship leader. I'm still the team leader. I own the whole team. But the engineers deciding to favour Perez there once again in these kind of conditions, and telling him to come in one lap earlier than me. So we're going to come in now for the dries. Ricciardo continues on, so he's risking it. Norris is in, Vettel as well. That's probably why, because McLaren don't want to double stack. So Ricciardo is forced to stay out for one more lap. So in a way, I guess at least my team haven't made me double stack with Perez. But we're now in then for the set of dry tyres. Perez put on a set of soft compound tyre. I don't think the softs will last a whole 11 laps around here. The tyre wear is pretty high on that red wall set, so we have gone for the medium yellow wall compound, because I feel like those guys around us on softs, they are going to start feeling that tyre wear a little bit at the end of this race, and that's where maybe we could then capitalise a little bit. So let's see what everyone goes with. Verstappen behind me is on softs, and same with Carlos Sainz. Ahead of us though, into the lead of the Grand Prix is Sergio Perez, because Ricciardo finally comes in, and that is how much the undercut, one lap of undercut, has worked out for Perez. He's jumped both Vettel and Norris himself has jumped Sebastian Vettel in the pit stops. McLaren jumped Aston Martin in the pit lane, but Perez is the biggest winner from P3 up to P1. But Norris is looking mighty rapid, and he's closed right up there. Couldn't quite make an overtake, but someone who can is Max Verstappen on ourselves with DRS available to the Dutchman. He's flown past. There's nothing much I can do in a straight line there with DRS. It's so powerful around here. And of course, remember, we're the only anyone, it would seem, apart from, I think, Ricciardo, on medium tyres here. Everyone else on soft, so everyone has better traction out of these corners versus us in these damp conditions as well. The soft compound is probably going to be a little bit quicker, but we do have the pace to come back at Verstappen in a straight line. Like I said, with DRS, no matter who you are, you're going to be at a big advantage down this straight. The slipstream's so powerful. Verstappen, very much like Carlos Sainz, squeezes us a fair amount on the left-hand side, but we get it done, and we're back up into P5 then. Meanwhile, up the road, I can see Vettel and Perez and Norris swapping positions. Looks like Perez has maintained the lead, but Vettel's into P2, Norris P3, and we're just about holding on to P4 for now, but Verstappen maintains the pressure on us. He's right there. He's got DRS once again. We're deploying ERS all the way down this straight, but even so, look at the closing speed and the difference with DRS open on the left-hand side. And oh no, we're taking too much curb on the right. We're facing backwards, and Gasly's, oh my word, how we avoided contact, and there's a big crash with Esteban Ocon, and Esteban Ocon is out of the Belgium Grand Prix. We've got a 5-place penalty, I think, for our involvement in helping Ocon retire from the Grand Prix, so to speak, because I think the Frenchman hit our rear end and broke his suspension arm on us. I don't know how we're still in this race anyway, though, because Gasly was literally driving right towards us, but this is how it happened then. Took way too much curb. Now, that wouldn't be an issue in the dry, maybe, but in the wet, obviously, remember, it was just raining, so it was very damp, and I don't know how Carlos Sainz has avoided us there. He is a very, very lucky chap, but look at this. Ocon actually hits me, and Ocon hitting me actually rotated my car in a way where Gasly could completely avoid me, but obviously it has meant that Ocon is out of this Grand Prix, and that collision has meant I've got a 5-place penalty. Now, somehow I've also come out with no damage. I thought I would have got floor damage off Ocon hitting me, but I've gotten very, very lucky that all I've got out of that is a 5-place second penalty. And it's also resulted in a second safety car then because of that crash with Ocon and the Alfa Romeo and Mercedes in the aftermath. So we're here in P8 then. Gasly, who's actually set the fast lap of the Grand Prix, is ahead of us then in P7 on the soft compounded tyre. Like I said, myself and Ricciardo, the only ones on mediums. We're lap 17. Now, this safety car would have helped everyone, but I still think myself and Ricciardo are on the best strategy. I think our tyres are going to, go the distance, whereas these guys, they are either going to be on really thin ice in terms of tyre wear, or they might even make a whole nother stop in this race. So it's not over yet. We've got a 5-second penalty that will hinder us. The safety car bunching everyone up's not helped us out here in terms of that penalty, but we've still got the strategic advantage. We're getting on that curb again. I can't believe I had the audacity to go on that curb again, and I almost lost the back end once again, but we now overtake Gasly. You can already see, I think this is the tyre wear difference as we easily sail past him in the heart of Sector 2 there, mid-corner on that right-hander down the hill. I think these guys are going to struggle. They are, and they're coming in. They're coming in for a pit stop here. So Daniel Ricciardo is going to take the lead of the Grand Prix. We're into second place. Perez, Vettel, Lando, Verstappen, they've all pit from those soft compounded tyres. So Ricciardo, myself, and George Russell, Tsunoda, Hamilton, all have had a blinder here as we've all chosen the medium tyre off that wet period, and we've now all got the track position, and we've got the tyres to go to the end. So it's Ricciardo from myself, Russell, Tsunoda, Hamilton, Sainz into P6. He actually did pit under the safety car, so he's played a clever game there, Carlos Sainz. He's on fresh mediums, and he's done it under the safety car, so he's got a free pit stop, so watch out for him. But Perez in P8 then, Sebastian Vettel P9. The championship leaders then fighting for just some measly few points at the back there of the top 10, and the top 3 that was there in place now finds himself in P8, 9 and 10. And meanwhile, the new top 3 is Ricciardo, myself, and George Russell in the Alpine. And at the end of lap 18 on to 19, we're going to absolutely send it round the outside to the inside for the bus stop chicane, going toe-to-toe with Daniel Ricciardo for the race win here at the Belgium Grand Prix, or the race lead, I should say, because remember, we have the 5-second penalty, so I don't know where we're going to end up, but right now, we are just fighting Ricciardo. I've got to just try and go as quick as I can, and maybe try and pull away from him if we can, and try and build a gap. I don't think we're going to build 5 seconds to him from P1 to into P2. That may be a little bit too audacious, but we can at least try and pull away and maybe try and secure ourselves a podium, because Russell is there in the realms of 5 seconds, but Ricciardo comes back at us. We might need to make a decision whether we're going to race for pride and get P1 on the road, or do we stick behind Ricciardo and try and use him almost to gain 5 seconds on George Russell. Yellow flags behind, and it's Sergio Perez. He's going slow, and he's got smoke coming out the back of his car, and Perez is going to have to retire, I think it is, from the Belgian Grand Prix. It was Sebastian Vettel last time out, and this time it's Perez's turn. So it's a fine balance. Both our championship leaders and rivals having DNF after one another. Hungary to Belgium. Sergio Perez, he's out of this Grand Prix. Vettel elevated up into P8, and we're still fighting. Daniel Ricciardo, we sent one down the inside of P1. It was a great little move, and Ricciardo continues to fight back at us. And in the meanwhile, Russell and Hamilton and even Carlos Sainz are closing up. The gap is only 3.8 to George Russell, then a further 0.6 to Hamilton, which could mean I could be down to P4, or as low as, or even P5 if I'm not careful. But we continue to have a sensational on-track battle with Ricciardo, because at this point in the race, quite annoyingly, myself and Ricciardo seem to be really equalised. So even if I was to let him through, we're not going to pull away 5 seconds. Like, Ricciardo's not actually that much quicker than me, so I would actually be held up by him in dirty air, and vice versa. You know, I'm just doing the same to him right now. We're so on pace with each other. It's kind of frustrating in a way. I would have rather Ricciardo, look to pull away and, walk away with P1, and me just use him as a DRS sort of tow. But instead, we've been so closely matched here that we're still scrapping away 4 laps later. On the last lap of the Grand Prix, Ricciardo comes through. This time, I'm not going to put up too much of a fight because it's the last lap. I know I've lost P1 anyway, but, I was having such a fun fight with him, to be fair. That move we did in Radion just then was absolutely crazy how close we got to him. But at this stage now, I'm hoping maybe, I'm going to lose my position to Hamilton. I'm going to lose my position to George Russell as well. I'm looking to maybe try and see if we can use Ricciardo on the back straight through Blanchimont and such. If I can use him and that slipstream to maybe just make sure we get ahead of Carlos Sainz with the 5 seconds. It's 4.5 to Sainz right now. So as it stands, Sainz would also overtake me with this penalty. So I'm hoping this last stretch, this last lap, can Ricciardo and some ERS help me out? Here we go, getting in the slipstream, and you're going to watch that top left rise and rise, and it's going to get to 4.8, 4.9, nearly. Will it get to 5 seconds? Just about, but we're now side by side with Ricciardo. We may as well go for it. We're side by side with him. Dive around the outside, lock up there. Ricciardo tries to keep it through, but we're going to get P1 on the road. P1 on the road, but it's not going to be the race win. And I don't even know what it is, because we won't know till the race results there. Did we do enough to stay ahead of Carlos Sainz? I don't know. But what a crazy race, and a bit of a shame, but Ricciardo is the one that wins the Belgian Grand Prix then.
What a fantastic Grand Prix that was, and an excellent win for McLaren. Talk to me, Ant. What was it that set them apart from the competition today?
Well, they played the safety car to absolute perfection. There are so many factors to worry about once the race is neutralised. I mean, do you pit for fresh rubber? Do you have the space behind you? How much fuel can you save? If you answer all of those questions correctly, you'll have a good chance. And that's exactly what happened today.
Our drivers are making their way out for the podium celebrations, and it's going to be McLaren picking up the winner's trophy. Congratulations to the entire team for that fantastic performance.
So Ricciardo returns to the top step of the podium for the 3rd time this season. You may forget, since he's not in the title fight, McLaren have been woeful in the last few episodes, but Ricciardo did win 2 out of the first 3 races, so he wins a 3rd race this season. And Hamilton is P2, and George Russell in the Alpine gets P3, and in the end, it was not enough. That last lap of slipstream with Ricciardo was not enough. Probably being side by side with him at the bus stop chicane didn't help us out. But at that point, there's physically nothing I can do. I am literally going to either push him through the bus stop chicane or I go side by side with him. Either way, I was going to lose time. And so we lost just enough for us to be down to P5. Sainz in the end gets P4. To be fair to Sainz, bit of a blinder by him because he was on that really bad 2-stop on the soft compounded tyre, but he pit under the safety car and recovered up to P4, whereas, you know, you then P2, Sebastian Vettel is down in P10, and Lando Norris, well, he actually did climb up to P6, so something went on there behind us, and Norris actually shot up like a rocket ship from P10 to P6, but the championship leader, Sebastian Vettel, finishes up in P10, so he gets 1 point. To be fair, for Perez's sake and for the team's sake, that's actually probably the best scenario in terms of, you know, Perez having a DNF, and he only loses 1 point to Vettel, whereas Vettel lost a whole 25 to Perez last episode. So actually, you know, the F1 gods have looked down upon Sergio Perez and our team there and helped him out because he's still only 10 points then behind Vettel in the championship. But with that win, Ricciardo is now into 3rd place. We're down to P4, so we need to pull up our socks if we want to try and maintain the P3 in the championship there. The constructors, we're ahead of Aston Martin, 13 points ahead of them, with Vettel and Stroll scoring real low in this race. So looking good versus Aston Martin there. McLaren gain a little bit back versus Mercedes, I guess, for their fight back maybe. You know, at one point McLaren were fighting for P1 at the very start of the season, but as I said, they've had, you know, 2 double DNFs in a row. They've been not very consistent as of late. You know, unlucky DNFs here and there as well. But Ricciardo getting the win makes a difference there. But a very, very chaotic race. In the end, bittersweet, because we did finish P1 on the actual road. So I'm happy about that. But in terms of obviously the penalty, that was my mistake, you know, spinning on the curb, and then the contact with Ocon was just because of that spin. So that's inevitably basically my fault for getting the 5 seconds there. So bit of a shame, but it is what it is. You know, the FI dealt out the penalty earlier on. So, you know, I just got to take the positives of having a very good strategy there that would have got us P1 had it not been for the spin. But that has been a chaotic Belgium Grand Prix. If you did enjoy it, then be sure to hit that like button, guys. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you're new around here, then do get subscribed for weekly Formula 1 content. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.